Shalom, good evening, good morning, good afternoon. We are truly global around the world. Cheryl LaRue is joining us, and more important is my name is Dr. Tovah Goldfein. I'm streaming live from Israel, and I'm always happy to see Rose, my co-host and professional partner, and my truly wonderful friend. Hi, Rose. Good morning. Thank you so much for waking up again early in the morning to join
Hi,
me.
Tovah. Now, this morning, today, in Australia, we are going to introduce Cheryl LaRue, who's going to facilitate the presence process, this lovely book that we've done several times, and Michael Galinsky, a filmmaker of all the rage, who also has participated in the presence process over many sessions and has supported our work in trying to put this out to the rest of the world. And they're both joining us this morning to just talk about the presence process. So good morning, Cheryl. Good morning, Michael. Would Michael start off maybe, please?
Sure. Well, I'll just tell you a quick story, which is that I came to know about the presence process because of Dr. John Sklar, who is a kind of a protege of Dr. Sarno. And he told me when he was supporting our film that he really wanted it to go to a somewhat spiritual place. And thankfully, I had just filmed with Prince E the day before, so I kind of understood what he was talking about. But he wanted me to do the presence process, and it took me probably a year before I did it, and then I really understood what he was talking about and why it was so important. And it's interesting, I've done it, I think 3 full times now, and I've read the book, several times. And what's interesting is, like anything in our lives that gives us information through metaphor, it's going to consistently meet us where we are. So, it may not give you everything you need the first time you practice it or read it, but the next time you do, you're like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize I got something from it. I didn't realize I got that. And I don't think that's disconnected from, say, the practice of yoga, which I've been doing now for 2.5 years. And it's funny when you first start doing the poses and you're figuring out like, okay, this and that. And then at a certain point, they've said 10 times, okay, I want you to turn your hands towards the middle, your lower arms in and your upper arms out, shoulders. And you're like, what? And then finally at a certain point, you're like, oh, I see, I can make that micro movement in my shoulder. But it takes, just like dealing with ideas, it takes a long time to kind of sit with the idea enough that you like go, oh, I didn't even see that sitting there. And then, you develop it over time. And all of that is to say that with all of this work, any kind of healing work, any kind of spiritual work, as soon as you feel like you've arrived, you are lost. It's really that that you've made it a little farther down the trail. Because people, like when we finish, people see the movie and they say, oh, are you healed? And I'm like, no, I have this terrible disease called being human.
Wait a minute. I want to quote that. Who said that? I want to quote that.
Because it's true. It's like, yes, we are, we're all going to die from this disease someday. It's a terrible, terrible disease. But we can try to live it as fully as we can, but it's going to catch us. And so it's the same with healing. Like we can try and heal as much as we can, but if you try to heal too hard, you miss life. And if you aren't present enough in life, you miss it as well. And I think that's really what all of the presence process is about, is learning to kind of be here. And for people, that can be really frustrating and annoying. Yeah, I'm here and I'm talking to you about my past. So pay attention to yeah, right. Like if you're talking about your past, you're not here right now. Yeah, but if I don't talk about that, I won't be able to get to the future. Right. So, okay, yeah, I hear you, but let's kind of bring it back to the center for a second. That middle point between the past and the future, which is where balance exists.
Yeah. The present moment.
Yes.
It's the only thing we've got, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
The past is gone and the future is yet to be.
Well, if we hold tight enough, we can kill both the future and the past. We can choke them out.
Yeah. It's not to say that we disregard the past or the future, but we concentrate on what we're surviving on at the moment. Now, the presence process is a 3-part or 4-part program, and I'd like to talk a little bit about that. Cheryl, you also have had a lot of experience in that. Cheryl is a pretty strong reader on various, what would you call it, spiritual journeys, I suppose, and self-awakening journeys. And she's a great sort of lover of Eckhart Tolle and several others. So by she being the facilitator of this program, she also brings a lot of other ideas into the system. And she's also been a person who has had a lot of chronic pain over the years. So she has a great understanding of what others are going through. And she's able to draw them back into the present moment. Even if their pain is really hard and bothering them, she'll draw them back and be present in that moment. Now, the book is about 70, I don't know how many pages. It sort of looks rather a large tome, but in actual fact, it's broken up into parts. So we don't really need to actually concentrate so much on the whole book, but we concentrate on individually reading the first 1 to 70 pages. Then part 2 is preparing for the journey. And, you know, having read this book a couple of times, I think part 2 is probably the part we should go to first, and then go to part 1. And then part 3 will all come together. We'll all talk about the journey, talk about the breathing, talk about all the things that Michael Brown has discovered to facilitate this book. How does that sound, Cheryl? Would that cover what we're trying to say?
Absolutely. So I'll just mention how I came across the presence process, because it just might put something to someone who's considering it. So I did suffer chronic pain, and I commenced ISTDP therapy. And during that time, I believe to heal or to integrate is the word I kind of like, because healing sort of says that something's wrong with you or you're broken. So I use the word integrate your past and everything that's wrong into the present. During the therapy, I know I needed to sort out the mental side. The physical, I started to do some exercises and that again, but came the spiritual side, and that means going into the body. And that's where the presence process, I commenced that a year ago and went through it. And that was the journey into self-discovery. I call it self-discovery of the self, of who you really were. And then I worked out that they say for each person, they're basically 95% unconscious through most of the day and 5% conscious. I believe I lost that 5% that I was conscious because I could not see. The mind had me and the brain had me where it wanted me, on the floor in pain. I couldn't break down those barriers until I found space to release some mental stuff from the past. Once I had some space, then came the ability to bring the self-discovery and enter in my body to find that space, and there came presence. So for me, I've done the presence process the first time on my own. The second one was within the group. And since then, I've also, I've spent countless hours with Eckhart Tolle, Michael Singer, Joe Dispenza, a couple of other people. I think I cannot pronounce his name, Sakturi or something. They're great spiritual teachers. I've read all their books, countless hours of their teaching to learn how to discover and how to actually be with yourself. And as Michael said, it's just, you think you're not learning anything through the presence process, but all of a sudden you just go, oh, you just drop in and you realize that you're there and you've discovered it. And once you've discovered it, then that's when you actually start to become the awareness behind how much your mind takes you into a place that you don't want to be. And so that's when the real journey begins. So for anyone that's wanting to alleviate chronic pain, bring stress levels down, because stress awareness it shouldn't happen. It's all about managing yourself. So it's self-management and listening to that body.
Can I jump in and
Michael.
say one thing? Yeah,
yes.
Which is, I think what everything you said is totally right on and great. And then the one aspect that I would kind of open up a little bit more is when we say, you know, a couple times you mentioned that the mind has you where it wants you. And I think that's the way it feels. But in some sense, if you kind of have a little more awareness that, you know, that the part of our mind that's doing that is more like the amygdala or the unconscious part. And what's going on is it has a distorted sense of what's keeping you safe, because sometimes these emotions feel so dangerous, especially a lot of times, you know, when we hear the word trauma, we think, you know, someone who was in war, someone who got attacked, someone who was mugged, someone who was in a car accident. But, you know, for a 3-year-old, not getting the lollipop that they want with incredible intentionality is traumatic, but also really not being heard or seen and having one's needs met, even before we have linguistic abilities. And so we learn to protect ourselves from emotions. And what it takes is kind of sometimes using your frontal cortex, your thinking brain, to reconnect with your amygdala, to be the thinking brain that says, oh, wait, that thing that we think is unsafe, it's actually okay. You know, okay, let's look at that really terrifying thought. Oh, once you see it, it's not that scary thing that you thought it was. And so it's only doing the best it can to protect us from something that we've taught it that we need to be safe from. But the truth is, it's not intentionality in the way that we often frame it. And I'm not saying you said it that way. I'm just saying for us all to think, oh, actually, if instead of thinking of its being in charge of us, it's more of like the 3-year-old in us that needs to be comforted and said, no, actually, it's okay. And because when we have a 3-year-old that's going to have a tantrum, they're going to rule the household until we can calm them down. And we can either calm them down by punishing them and making them shut up, or making them feel comfortable enough that they can calm down and then bring back presence. And so even as parents, sometimes we are like, okay, that's enough. Go to your room. And it's a very normal human response. But the more we know, we realize, actually, maybe I just need to be a little more present, and then we can calm it down. And maybe we can't, but at least if we're making that effort, we're doing the best that we can as parents.
Michael, would you expand on that now too, please, and talk about responding rather than reacting?
Yeah.
Because that is also tied up with attachment.
Absolutely. And it's like, I think that, you know, for me, week 3 of the presence process is really about every time you feel frustrated or angry, you have to kind of interrogate it. And to me, that's kind of like foundational to being able to navigate the world better. And even, but some of the problem with that, right, is so if we're angry, it tends to be about some framing or expectation that we have that something go a certain way, or that people are supposed to be about a certain way. And that all pertains to what we think we need. Like, you know, my daughter is struggling a bit right now. She's just gone to college. And, you know, I think she's someone who's always often seeking out a caretaker. And you'll find people who want to be a caretaker, and that can work out well for a while. But at a certain point, then the caretaker person will be like, that's too much. And then be like, bam, you're out of here. Because they'll say, you've overstepped. You're asking too much of me, even if they feel like they have a need to take care. So when we feel like we're mad at somebody because they're not giving us enough of what we feel like we need, well, that's really about us. And so that's what I always try to communicate to people. If you're mad at somebody, it really has something to do with you. You may have a justifiable reason to be angry. It doesn't mean it isn't still about you. And being angry actually isn't going to help you get the thing you want. Repressing your anger also isn't going to help you. But being with it, thinking about it, and going, yeah, the thing that person did was out of line. But if I go, that was out of line, it's very unlikely to go, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, I didn't realize that. But if you are able to say, I just, you know, can we pause a second? Because that made me feel uncomfortable. And I understand that's about me, but can we try and bring that back down? You may be able to solve it, but you also may find that that's not going to work. So it's a very complicated process, especially once we become a little more responsible for our reactions. We expect other people to live up to that expectation that they be responsible. And oftentimes they're not able to. And so that's a big part of this process is, number one, being able to kind of be more present with ourselves and what we're feeling. And instead of saying, I feel angry, so it's your fault, you know, say, I feel angry. Wow, it's really uncomfortable to feel angry. But, you know, actually, I realize I'm feeling angry because I'm sad, and I don't even feel like I can say that. So I'm then projecting that back onto you as anger. I'm so sorry. I just realized that made me sad. Can I tell you that made me sad what you said? And you're not responsible for it, but maybe we can figure something out.
In summary,
yeah.
I think it's important because you're the one person who I can like follow your stories and like, whoa, and you come back to like the point. So in summary,
yeah,
responding rather than reacting not only brings us to the moment, the present moment, but it does allow. I'm just gonna. There's some echo here.
There's some feedback going on.
Less echo now. Okay.
Oh, I think that might be me.
Oh, okay. Anyway, that when we respond rather than react, our brain can actually respond to that and calm down. I know it's simplifying TMS, but now we don't hear you at all.
I was just saying there's a truck behind me.
Okay.
That's right.
Yeah. So let's discuss the absolute, because Michael Brown will say in his book, this is like a major point. I mean, remember, Michael Brown had an itis. Also a lot of inflammation, and searched for 7 years to find an answer and created this book, and his pain went away. So he always says, like, Rose, what did you think? Didn't you think the respond and react was one of the major aha moments that Michael Brown, and like if we respond and not react, couldn't that be like the end of TMS for the majority of people if that was all they did?
Well, the response is from when you respond, you're actually more conscious in your body because it's coming from a greater place. When we react, sometimes it's that's when the ego and all that comes into it, but you're aware of which part of you that you are within yourself. You are consciously responding. Reactive sometimes is not the answer we wanted to give to someone. And then once we're more responsive to, we're more aware because we can feel what emotions we're feeling because we're down in the body more, whereas we're not up here in a reactive
defensive mode.
Yes, defensive. Yeah. It's just we react.
Defending yourself.
Yes. And therefore, when you go through the process, I think the thing that I liked was the forgiveness part. When you truly are consciously forgiving, you forgive yourself, but you realize how much of an unconscious you were asleep, how much unconsciously you were not there. So you can forgive yourself, and then you can forgive others because you actually see in them how much they're not actually conscious sometimes. So it makes it easier to forgive those that you need to heal, to integrate all this, to come from that greater place, to come from the heart, basically, because our heart and brain are communicating all day long. Our heart actually talks to our brain, and that's where you want to be, always conscious, like as much as you can. I mean, the brain will come in and out. We have all this mind chatter and everything, and the idea is to try and become more conscious with it.
Yeah, I think that all that is so great, and I think really that we always react. That's how we exist in the world, because the responding is noticing the reaction and getting in the way of it. And our reactions are essentially always going to be somewhat defensive if we stay in a non-present defensive mindset. And so it takes a lot of work to come to acceptance. So responding is also being able to do so without attachment. So I'm going to tell you, I just heard this, and you don't have to get their exact, they don't have to react or respond exactly as you need them to, but you just have to stay present. And sometimes when we're struggling, I've had a pretty rough couple of weeks, so I found myself to be quite a bit more reactive recently. And but sometimes reaction is also about being able to recognize where you need a boundary. And sometimes you're involved in relationships where you get highly reactive because they're highly reactive. And sometimes you're like, actually, if I don't put that lead bar there, we're going to have a nuclear reaction. And I just have to kind of have a boundary and create some separation because I don't have the wherewithal to put up with that mess, because it's, you know what I mean? So it gets very complicated. And part of the reason for saying that is again, this isn't about it's not the perfection process. It's the presence process. And if you have a perfectionist mindset, without realizing it, you can easily get trapped into, I thought I had this figured out. I thought it was healed. Instead of, oh, there it goes again. Okay, let me just respond to even not having done it perfectly.
Yeah, I'm just mentioning what Doreen said. Like he's like, why aren't I there yet? Are we there yet?
That's exactly what we just addressed.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things when you are trying to become conscious is sort of don't try and be in a hurry to be to the next point, because that's when you're sort of dishonoring the now. We're always in a hurry, but I've got to do this because I want to be there, and you're already saying, but I don't want to be here. But you need to be here. You need to follow the now to get to the next stage. And then you're doing it more consciously rather than this reactive or hurrying. Okay, I've got to do this because I really want to be here. When you need to, your soul and everything saying, well, don't you want to be here with me now? And then you just move through the paces. You can move fast, but just at a more conscious pace rather than.
Cheryl, why is it so hard to be in the present moment? It is hard. It's like, I keep saying, oh, I'll just get into the habit, but it's hard to stay in the present moment. It's like a really difficult thing.
Because we're so conditioned that that's the way we are, but that we want to always be somewhere else where we're not now. And once but already when you notice that you are actually not wanting to be here, wanting to be there, then you are consciously present. And as long as you know, okay, well, there it goes again, that's okay. Don't criticize yourself. You go, okay, well, it just happened again. It just happened. It said it wants to be over there and I want to be. So you pull yourself back in, and that's okay. You just work at it as long as you notice it. As long as you notice it, then you're on that path. It's when we don't notice. It's like Michael said, attachment. It's like a thought sometimes comes into your mind. Don't attach yourself through the thought all the time, because the thought is not always what you consciously is happening within. Sometimes it can be an old mind conditioned thought, and it will take you somewhere, and it will take you to fear sometimes, because it could be something you're projecting into the future. So the more conscious, the less fearful you are, because you're not always wanting to be here, over there, but I want to be over there, but you need to be here. Does that make sense? Does that
Well, you are here, so it's not even that you need to be here. This is
here.
where you are. So just be here.
That's where you are. That's the reality, isn't it?
Yeah. Yes. And there's nothing else that matters more than where you need to be now. But it's just something you just have to keep practicing and practicing. And it's not really a practice. It's more of a, once you discover it, you just want to be there because you feel joyful. And that peace, it's like most people will look at a baby, right? Pick up a newborn baby. And this is a good example. And they'll go, oh, this baby's so peaceful. It's got some sort of power over me. It doesn't. It's just instilled in you your natural being state of what you would like to be. So that's why a lot of people like to be around babies, or they stare at a peaceful baby sleeping, because it brings them back into their natural state of just being now.
That's well said. You know, Cheryl, talk a little bit also about the breathing process, because part of this coming into the present moment is to be aware of our breath and the depth and the expansion of our breath, and how important it is. It's the only thing that keeps us going. I shouldn't say the only thing, but it's the primary thing that keeps us alive. And now, as we become conscious of our breath in the presence process, we sort of, like, you could even say, we honor it. That if we pause and give our breath a chance, it will tell us what to do.
Because the body will always follow the breath. So if you stop, if you are in that thing where you think, oh, I need to get back to the moment, or you're reacting, or if you follow the breath, if you just stop and pause and follow the breath. I mean, we breathe naturally, thank goodness, because we'd all be dead if we went on autopilot with our breathing. But
what about that? What about that, Rose? Rose and I talk about that all the time.
I know, thank goodness sometimes. But the idea is not to shallow breathe, is to go back in, check in with yourself. Just check in. every half an hour, maybe just check in, do a bit of a sigh, follow the breath in and let the body just reset and sigh. I always do it in with a 5 and out with an 8 when I want to really check in, but I make sure my abdomen is breathing. So I'm breathing from down low. And if you can pause and then place your hands and palms in a downward position, and Michael would know this from yoga, because yoga is about the breath. And most of the time our palms are in the downward position, because when we get angry or we're explaining, we're going, when you're doing that, the actual lungs are only filling from the halfway mark upwards. Once our palms are in a downward peaceful position, when you breathe in, you will actually notice that your lungs are filling to a greater capacity, and there's our expansion in our body. So therefore the nervous system is going, oh, it's happier. It's calming down because you're following the breath. We're out of our minds for a second. We're giving ourselves that much needed rest. It's probably more important than sleeping, is to sometimes just be still in our bodies and give our bodies what they're looking for in our whole nervous system. Just breathe.
Oops.
Just the breath. The breath
Tovah,
is life.
You've got a lovely little exercise. I wonder if you'd asked our audience maybe now to do that little exercise. It's very short, but very, very sort of telling of what the presence process is about. Would you mind doing that for us now?
That's that breath I was telling you about?
Yeah. Yes.
Yes. So in the mornings when you wake up, it's only like a 2-minute exercise, if that. Please don't go to your phone. Don't do anything else. This will bring your body, it will wake you up, because often we wake up in the morning and the first thing we do is, some people are like, oh, but I really need to know my emails right now, or the mind, as soon as you wake up, I know it's happened to me. I'm thinking about yesterday or year's time, or, it can go back, is to wake yourself up. You don't want the mind to wake you up. You want to wake yourself up. So in the morning, you wake up, we just breathe in with the abdomen, but I need your hands are basically placed. So yoga position, Michael, you will know this one. So above your heart, we breathe in for 5. We breathe out for 8 seconds. We breathe in again. And as we breathe out, place your hand. We're doing this above our heart. We're gently rubbing our hands. Place them over your eyes on the 8 seconds that you're breathing out, and do that a few times. Then remove your hands. Breathe in again. As we breathe out on the 8, we will do that again with our eyes closed, and we can start to partially wake them up. After you do that a few times, on the breath going outwards, you will notice that you are actually in conscious, in the present moment. You will actually feel yourself drop down into your heart, and you'll go, where did my mind go? Everything's still. You've woken yourself up. You haven't let the mind wake you up. You wake you up, and it works. It actually works. I do it every morning. It was actually an exercise I got off probably one of the most popular spiritual teachers in the world, and I thought, I'll give this a go. And it actually works. By waking yourself up in the morning, you've already just given yourself the best medicine you can for the whole day. You started out by and you'll get yourself out of bed. You'll go, oh, lovely feeling.
Excellent.
You see why we think that Cheryl will be a great facilitator for the presence process?
I might want to sign up and take it again and read it again.
It's
and I want to mention something about the breathing. I don't know, Michael or Rose or Cheryl, if you noticed this, but Michael Brown, he chose a certain kind of breathing, and he says it's not for everyone, but this is what I chose. And he went all over looking for breathing coaches until he found this woman. It's not important what her name is, and she has a big breathing, project, organization, website. And he found that the fact that I think that the normal breathe in and breathe out. Now, the reason why I just like that is because we're breathing that way all the time. And so every time we breathe is an opportunity to be present. Like every time I breathe is a moment, is a second that I could be oh, here's an opportunity for me to practice watching my breath. Like for me, it was like that's how I connected. It was very simple, and that's how I connected with what, so for me, even watching his YouTube wasn't comfortable. But every opportunity is a moment to be mindful, and we don't have to be yogis on the mountain. We could just be, who we are, breathing. And so I think it's intimidating for a lot about breathing. You just made that very simple. You just did. So it's really just about our perception. I might make a lot of things complicated, so I'm always trying to look for simple. So I found it.
The breath is the easiest thing.
Rose? Yeah, honey,
Yeah.
Rose?
Tovah, could you type? Tovah's the only person who can type in responses. So I just want to have a pause. Could you type in breathing in love, Dr. Judith Kravitz?
Yes.
Kravitz.
Dr.
Breathing in love.
Judith Kravitz?
Kravitz. Kravitz.
Have you heard of her, Michael?
Judith Kravitz?
Yeah.
I've heard the name.
Transformational breathing.
Transformational Breath Foundation.
Yeah.
She's in the foreword of the book, or the preface, should I say, of the book, and it's her inspiration that Michael Brown found helpful, and So just for a reference for people, thank you.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. How's your meditation practice, Michael, and how does it work for you? And is it, because it's hard for everyone to get into a practice.
For me, it's mostly just doing yoga almost every day. That's the meditation mostly that I do. I do more 5-minute ones here and there, but I have not held to as regular practice as I might like. But I pretty much do yoga 6 days a week. So that's what I see as my meditation practice, where I really drop in and just be present with both the breath and the physical movement. And because you're doing the physical movement and being present with that, it can be very meditative. Because I do find actually I'm not thinking about a lot of other things while I'm doing the yoga. It's pretty intense, difficult practice for me. So that's my meditation most than that.
Well, it is. It's meditation of the body, isn't it?
Yeah, but it's definitely still focused on the breath and being present. But bringing my attention to those movements isn't a thought thing as much as being present in that physical space. So, but it's not like trying to do it perfectly. It's just trying to find that weird balance, especially because my body's a little bit imbalanced. So it's a lot of very present effort. So I'm not like, what am I going to make for dinner? It's like, how the fuck am I going to hold this pose?
There's that inner critic. Rose, what about that inner critic?
What about it? Eh? It's a good friend, isn't it?
Yeah.
Schadenfreund.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, no, it's funny. I did a little post today because, one of my legs is definitely a lot weaker and thinner than the other leg after the last time my back went out. And, it's slowly over time, it's getting a little strength, but on one heel, the weak leg, the heel is all worn out. And on the other, it's the toe, which is what I'm trying to run on. And I was just like, in some sense, they're out of balance, but in some sense, they found their own balance, right? Like one leg is taking this, the other leg is taking that. Yeah, so it's about trying to, just recognize and accept where it's at, but also try to bring things still further, like accept where you are in yoga, like what you can and can't do, but also still be with an intention of moving towards ever-increasing levels of balance, And some days you can't, some days you can, and accept where you are, but still being able to have an intention in one direction, which is not, you can have an intention without an attachment.
Yes.
Exactly.
Well, when you say without attachment, you're not actually talking about attachment. You're actually talking about more of a putting up a resistance, aren't you?
But that's because of expectation, right? So, like I saw this really good talk the other day with I can't remember her first name, but it's Eckhart Tolle's wife, and so, she was talking about kind of it's kind of radical acceptance is this whole thing she was talking about, and someone but really what it's about is letting go of resistance, right? And any kind of expectation creates resistance because you're expecting X, so you're going to resist Y. right?
Exactly.
And so someone said, well, how do you deal with activism without resistance? And so that's recognizing we can notice that something is wrong, but not turn the people who are making it wrong into our enemies. And that really spoke to me, because I think that, like, advocating for justice is really important. But if we advocate for justice in a way that goes like this, well, what do you get back? You get this. So what you want to do is go up to this point and say, it would be really wonderful if we could move in this direction gently. But anytime you push across a line, you're going to get resistance. That's it. But if you can push up to the line so gently that they don't even notice that you just have slowly pushed it in the arc of justice. Yeah.
Well, that's your pattern.
That's the pattern. Could I also add to that? When we do the presence process, what we're doing is we're titrating our anxiety as well. The anxiety that comes up about dealing with our relationships creates anxiety. And then as we do the presence process, we're actually, with our breath, using our breath and our reflective capacity, we're actually titrating our anxiety so that our chronic pain is less important. It doesn't actually take it away initially, but what it does is it loses its importance, and it's sort of like sense of the all-encompassing thoughts in our minds. I'd just like to, for a moment, folks, just talk about week 4. And part of the presence process is about self-reflection. And one of the responses that Michael Brown came up with is, I feel unconditionally. I feel unconditionally. We only feel in our bodies. We only feel in our bodies, not in our minds, but in our bodies. We touch, we taste, all of those things, they're all in our bodies. Now, when we do that reflective response, the feelings become integrated. So I just want to sort of point that out. It's just a page in the book for anyone who's listening to us or watching us at the moment to see how important it is just for all of those experiences to be lived in the moment. And the other thing that I want to talk about is that reflective capacity that works for us. When we do have, say, an upset or things go wrong, we can repair them completely in the moment. We don't have to cut people off or anything else like that. We can just do our breathing, have that self-reflective capacity, and then repair our disruptions. That's yeah.
Well, the breath too, I think, because the breath you can't breathe the breath into the past or the future. The breath is only now and into the present. So if an old, because like for me, I mean, I'm 53, so I've got all these old conditioned thoughts that sometimes will still try and come up. It might be a trigger, so my brain will archive back into the depths and go, oh, remember you used to do that. But the more I breathe, that's when I focus on that breath for conscious, because the more I breathe and I'm present, it diffuses itself because I'm not attaching to that thought anymore. So it just diffuses and it sources itself.
Cheryl, it becomes a new pattern, and we are doing neuroplasticity. We are creating a new pattern in the brain. We're carving a highway of pain relief and mindfulness.
New neuro pathways. So then the brain will understand that that's the pathways we want now. We don't want to operate on those old neuro pathways that we had. So it takes a while. So the mind attacks do come in where the old patterns will come in because you're talking about something that's been in your system for so long. And the brain also, for the brain, it already knows it. So it's going to go to that first.
It's like the brain gets to be a brain and not have to be your protector and your guard, pulling blood, pulling it, to bring that inflammation. Let's protect that body because the army's coming. So a brain gets to be a brain and do its job.
I think, one thing to jump in and kind of center on for a moment is that, we're all talking about this in a very individualistic way. But the truth is, all the work that we're doing is actually related quite literally to the genes of our ancestors, but also to the context of our culture. And that culture also impacts the genes of our ancestors. So a lot of times we think nature versus nurture, and if we just kind of nurture properly, we'll heal all these things. But it's a very complex process, which is partly why I'm saying like we kind of need to give not only ourselves grace, but all of the people around us as well. And the positive aspect of that is I do think like, I worked on this film about Dr. Sarno starting in 2004, but my first experience with him was my dad read the book in 1984. So these ideas are not new to me at all. And yet I'm consistently able to go a little bit deeper into them over the span of 40 years. It's 40 years of being kind of dealing with these ideas. And at first, we only get them on the level that we can understand them culturally, to the degree that the resistance we faced when we tried to make this movie in 2004 was profound. There was no way to fund it. There was no way to get anyone to talk to you about it. There was no way to deal with it at all. And even when we finished it in 2016, the world and the cultural acceptance of these ideas was wildly far behind where it is now. And it's only even 6 months ago that I was able to articulate, Dr. Sarno was treating in a trauma-informed manner before anybody had articulated that or what it might mean. But now we're kind of in the midst of this trauma awareness revolution, which, we're not going to see, like, we're actually not seeing just within the worlds that we live in. Like, Dr. Sarno's work is being proven in major papers that are being published in major journals, and that's being picked up by the Washington Post, and it's starting to go like that. But at the same time, I'm also seeing stuff on Twitter where people are like, psychedelic pharmaceutical stocks are going to be like Bitcoin, like, because there's an incredible like rising cultural awareness that actually coming to deal with this trauma, either through meditation or microdosing of psychedelics, all this stuff is rising in this profound way. Whereas if you had said to somebody, oh yeah, you should think about this in a trauma-informed manner.
Come back.
I don't know if any of you guys have watched Ted Lasso, which is this TV show on Apple, but it's about a soccer coach who, anyway, the whole show is about healing from trauma. It is a trauma-informed sitcom / rom-com, and each episode turns on some very small T trauma of one of the players on the soccer team or one of the characters. But the arc of the 2 seasons so far is the coach's intense trauma, and that gets worked through. So we're starting to see
every movie. This is about Finding Joe. That movie. It's the human experience.
Well, right. I would say that's true, but I'd say if the so that is true. But a lot of the stories that we tell in these kind of heroic ways actually subsume some of the more personal truth, and they're more about telling us how to be in the world, or they're more archetypal. But I think a trauma-informed approach makes space for the emotional processing. And the reason I say it's a trauma-informed show is they actually have a psychologist come in on the team, and she helps every player on the team. But the coach is really resistant to her because he has the deepest trauma and is the most scared of it. And when he's forced to kind of confront it, he heals. And and he actually, before he's healed, he has a panic attack on the pitch and he runs from the field. But he gets it covered by saying he had a stomach issue. And in the last episode, it comes out that his like assistant coach is trying to undermine him, and gives that information to this to a writer for the paper, who then puts a story on the cover saying it was a panic attack. And what he does in the press conference is, now that he's healed through that trauma, right, he's able to say, I'm glad you brought that up. Yes, it was a panic attack. I was having some emotional issues that I had to work through, and I'm really glad we can now have this discussion about how difficult it is to deal with these emotional issues in sport. So
fantastic. Okay.
Yeah.
Tova,
so that is the whole arc of the show.
Will you put that on the computer now too, please? What was the name of the show, Michael?
It's called Ted Lasso, Lasso, Ted Lasso. It won like 20 Emmy Awards and stuff. That's
okay. We'll put it down because that's good reference.
It's a great show, and what it is it's really like, so. For instance, one of the players was severely abused by his dad, and he's just a jerk but he becomes an unjerk over the course of the season by dealing with that and getting support from the team, including the coach, right? But giving him another chance and things like that. But so each of these small traumas drives every episode, but it's the major trauma that drives the whole series. And I just think that and by the way, the guy who runs the show, Jason Sudeikis, had like alopecia, lost all his hair. And I think he's actually mentioned Sarno before. So it's very clear that that is what's going on in the show.
Great. There is a question from Kelly, who's, I know is an artist. By the way, Kelly, I see your art on the internet. It's beautiful. But he's asking about other presence process groups online. So, Rose, you want to tell him a little bit about what's coming up for us in the future about our groups?
Sure. Kelly, what we're doing, like over 3 years now, or 2 years, we've run a group on Zoom, but with the presence process being the model we're using. What we do is we meet every week online, and Cheryl is going to facilitate it this time. And that way, we're going to have someone who's more dedicated to actually providing the reflections of that. And we just meet on Zoom and we talk about the group and what we've learned. And what we found within the group is that one person will have a problem in one way, and the other members of the group actually, Cheryl, how would you put it? You sort of like support each other, and then the process is quicker. And each week we fulfill the process. Like I used week 4 as my example before about, I've got week 2 up here now, but week 4 is, here we are, go to week 3. I choose to respond. So, in our group, we then talk about how we've responded or how we haven't, and the difficulties we've experienced with not responding and just reacting and jumping into a reaction rather than a response. So it sort of smooths the path for the next week. Would that be, Cheryl? Would that be how we would look at it?
I was actually just about to tap onto that. So, as I said, I've done the presence process book twice, once by myself and once within the group. With the group is good in the sense of along the way you're going to meet resistance. Resistance will come because of our old patterns, and when we start the breathing, the transformational breath work, it will bring up emotions. Now, most of us have been told all our lives, don't feel angry. You're not allowed to cry, or you're not allowed. So all this is going to come up. Now that can, because as the world that we know it with all this TMS and all this, it is getting bigger. We're getting ourselves known. It can divide you, or you can think this is too hard. Is this meant to happen to me? Is this what's right? By coming with the group each week, you'll actually see that others are going through the same thing, and it's more that support that it's okay, you're on the right path, because your mind will also tell you along the way, oh, this is too hard, but it's not you that's saying too hard, because you've already decided to do this. So you've just got to remember every time that resistance come up, that you have already decided, you yourself, your mind won't want it because it wants those old patterns. So the group session is the best support you will get, and it will speed the process up, because you might have a week where you're going, but I feel all alone in this. I feel like, does anyone, this is like, I'm having all these thoughts and this is happening and I don't know what to do. When you come to the group, you'll be reassured that, oh, this is a good thing. This is good. Let that come up. And then you'll be ready for the next week. So I hope that explains it, to get through that resistance pattern. That resistance is and Michael Brown actually says it in his book. The first number 1 resistance is, this is too hard. I can't do this. This is not you talking. You've already spoken. You've decided to take this path and this journey to heal your chronic pain and to live a more conscious life. So you've just got to remember that. But sometimes it's just good to be reminded and amongst a group of people who are going to support you and who are on that journey with you.
And could I add to that? You can drop your defiance then.
Yes.
Because actually what is happening is it's a defiance that I'm not going to, this isn't going to heal me, or I'm not going to move on. And that sort of resistance comes up as defiance. Now we're going to have a information session. We're going to have 2 of them, one sort of for our part of the world and one more for Michael's part of the world. And of course, Tovah's in the middle, Europe, Israel, UK. So we're going to advertise that on Eventbrite, and we're going to come together for just information. That's all. So that people can actually come talk to us about what their fears are about it, and what they want to get out of it, and things like that. So that's going to be on the 27th, isn't it?
Yes.
27th.
We'll be advertising it.
Put that up on the screen as well. And it would just be signing into Zoom and then all getting together, chatting about it.
Yeah,
so
it's very profound. It's a 10-week process, right? It's a 10 to 12 week process.
Yeah, I think the first week is your sort of meet. So it would be nice we all come
just get together.
Get together.
And then the 10 weeks. And then it's always nice to have that week afterwards to sort of like integrate it all with one another. Because, you know, when you think about it, 10 weeks is what, a month and a half. It's only an hour we spend with each other, but that's a month and a half that we've made connections with other people. We'll all move on in our own ways,
2 months and a half,
but that memory will stay with us of how we reacted within the group.
Cheryl, Robbie has a question for you. Let's bring it up. Cheryl, earlier you mentioned stress. What are ways you implemented when you had chronic pain with the stress on your body? The stress hormones impacted on her body, and she's lost a lot of weight. That's how her body reacted. So maybe you can share your experience.
When I back in 2019, when I really had multiple symptoms coming up, especially the costochondritis, the stress levels were really high. I don't think I had much consciousness left in me at all, and I lost about 10 kilos as well, so I can relate to that. And during that time of the stress levels, I guess that's when I started the merry-go-round with doctors and so forth, looking for everything. I would have pain patches covered all over my body, to every pill health-wise that you could name. I went to different chiropractors to try and bring my stress levels down, and nothing would bring it down. I was just an anxious ball of a live wire, just anxiety through the roof. It wasn't until I could release some of these emotions, when I realized it was emotions coming that were there, that I had to release some of that so I could allow the space in my body. While you're 100% running on chronic pain, the space in your body there is no space. We forget to breathe. I was shallow breathing, so I didn't even know how to breathe properly through my abdomen, but now I do. So now I know, even if I get stressed about something now, is to go straight to my breath. But I already have space in my body. But whilst you're in that, so coming into the present moment, because then it tries to take you away from thinking about the past, away from thinking about your chronic pain. It does work, because you're only thinking about the now. I know the now can be that you're in extreme pain and you go, but I'm hurting. This is pain. How can I not think about anything else? But when you follow the breath and you really learn how to breathe, the oxygen through your body brings an expansion into your body, and you do find some space, and that little bit of space you grow bit by bit by bit. Once you get that inch, you keep taking that next inch, and you make it a mile.
It's sort of like microseconds of space, isn't it?
Microseconds of space, and you will notice it. Absolutely notice it. And that's when you really start to go, there's something there. You discover it. It's not a creation. It's something you just discover within you. And that gives you the strength to manage your body, because that's your body telling you. In the end, you'll realize that all this chronic pain was the best friend that you could have ever had. And we should feel blessed that we've been given this opportunity before we get diseases that could ultimately send us down underneath the turf. I would rather be on this side of the turf. So I say thank you every day that I don't have cancer. I've had a lot of chronic pain illnesses to deal with, but yes, they were my messages. And I finally had a little bit of space and I went, that was it. And I've just ran with it.
Amazing. Amazing.
Yeah.
Michael, how do you feel? You've been, I've noticed, Michael, we've been hanging out for 2 years now. And I don't recall you having any kind of crisis with your back, with your sciatica. I think you're coasting for many, many years.
I'd say slowly moving forward. I mean, I wake up in the morning, my lower back is stiff, and I just, I move and it gets looser, and it is, and I just try not to even, not try. I don't worry about it or think about it. And I am sore a lot, but I think it's mostly because I'm really doing the hard work in the yoga, and so you get sore. And it's just like it's sore from exercise.
So chronic pain doesn't.
That's a good sore, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Sweetheart.
Yes.
Yeah.
Bring on that lactic acid. But so you don't. I remember one of our listeners last time you were on asked about tinnitus, and you said I still get it and it doesn't bother me. Where it's
I have ringing. I was noticing it 2 days ago because it was my wife and kid were out of town and I was really quiet. I was like, wow, that is loud. That is really loud. But because it was really quiet. But we're not often in kind of those super quiet environments where it really gets to me or I notice it. But even when I notice it, I'm like, wow, I observe it rather than go, oh my God, it's so bad. And then it's not there. It's the same as pain. We know if the more attention we bring to our pain, and especially an attention of resistance, the louder it's going to get, and the more panicky we get, and the more panicky we get, the less ability we have to respond to it. So we go to our breath, as you just said, and we do whatever we can to calm, or we get out of that moment where we're stuck in that place. We do whatever we can to move away from that. Rose?
Michael, can you tell the audience about, I think it was Harper or Fiona, says to you on the floor, it's okay for someone else to be awesome. Can you recount that?
Because you can let someone else be awesome for a while. Because she knew that I had pushed myself a little too hard, and she said, just let someone else be awesome for a while. I have to kind of remind her of that now. She's starting to time.
Exactly.
That she is awesome. She doesn't need to worry so much about whether or not, she's going to succeed or achieve. And none of that fucking matters. It just doesn't. It may say on your gravestone, well, it's going to say is this person's dead. Essentially. And it may say, they ran and they did this and they did. None of that matters. It's just
by the way, they died. They're dead.
Yeah. By the way, they're no longer with us. But so it's not about achievement or anything else. It's about trying to figure out how to be here.
Exactly. And be in the moment
for yourself and others.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Now we need to.
Easier not to people please and just be in the moment than try. It's easier, it's less energy to let someone else be awesome for a change, isn't it, Michael?
Right, but also, the more present you are, the more you're pleasing other people because they feel seen. So it's we don't have to.
That's right.
Look at me. You just get. If you're just there, they're like, oh, wow.
Yeah. They actually do gravitate. They do gravitate towards it because you're there. You're interactive, but you're interactive in a very more present, more conscious way.
But it's also a magnet for everything. So it's also a lot of the kind of the weird emotions come towards you too, and you have to be kind of extra aware. Oh, no, thank you. I don't need that right now. I'm not going to be responsible.
Besides the breath, what are some tips? I like to send some take-home insights for our listeners. So what besides the breath? How else do we learn the amazing pattern, positive pattern and habit and mindfulness of being in the moment?
There's this really great book called The Presence Process, and it teaches you how to do that. It's 10 weeks.
Very good, Michael.
We did not plan that. We did not plan that.
No, but the whole point is, what it does is it takes you from the outside in. So it does it in a patterned way as you go deeper and deeper into the understanding. And so it's a good point. So you're starting with the breath, but you're also going with deeper levels of thoughtful awareness. It's like you're walking through, almost like, what's it called? Like a Nautilus shell to the middle, where you're walking in, and then you get to this more exact understanding, and then you start over again. And you do that throughout your life. You just can. The point is, again, all the time people want to know, how do I get healed? And it's not, how do you learn to start healing, to live in a healing way? Because healing isn't a destination, it's a process. And that's why it's the present process. It's not the present's destination, it's the present's process. And you may go through that process, but if you think you're done with that process, then you stepped out of that process. It's a lifelong process of trying to figure out how to be present. And maybe you go through that process again to both relearn some of those things, but also realize, oh, I didn't actually get that the first time. I thought I did, but I didn't, And, it's interesting. I think even as we'd already been making our movie when we started the presence process, but it really confirmed for me why my father's wedding speech was this very short 2-paragraph metaphor on life as filmmaking. And if you want to make a film, what kind of character do you want to be? And you want to be not the star, because that's taking all the attention. You want to be the character actor who deftly shifts roles all through life, because you want to be able to shift, change, and grow. And the star of the film usually is not shift, changing, and growing. They're kind of on the hero's journey, but that's probably what I was saying before. The hero's journey is really more fabulistic instead of metaphorical in a weird way. It's like it's so fated to go in a specific way that it may go up and down and get off course, but it doesn't have as much movement as the character actor, right? And the point is that we realized that that was so useful to help with the arc of the movie, because literally every time I read that very short little piece, it meets me where I am, right? It meets you where you are. It's not a set of facts, here's what you do. It's like, it's a set of awarenesses that reflect where you are in that moment, right? So everybody's going to read it differently. Everybody's going to learn something different from it every different day. It's going to reflect back on some kind of thing within themselves that they need to have reflected back. And I think that's what the presence process does. We can do it in community because we all have different experiences, and someone else's experience can help us see something that maybe we didn't see. But at the end of the day, the presence process is a highly individualistic, unique experience. And so we don't want to be comparing and contrasting our experience to anybody else's. I think this is an important insight when doing it into a group, but instead gaining greater insight into our own response, rather than thinking, oh, I should be having it like that person's having it, rather than, oh, wow, I didn't even think about that. So it's really about figuring out how to do it without attachment, and instead being able to get the positive reflections that can be useful to us.
Yes. Could I add to that, Michael, that by us doing it weekly, as we do, we're actually doing it individually, and then we come together to sort of just talk about our experience. So it's more of a broad base. But anyone who's listening to us at the moment, it's not that we tell you how to do this work. We actually reflect on the work.
Right. It's not dissimilar from Dr. Sarno having small group meetings after doing the lecture, in which different people could say what they were going through, and that might help others, and they might get insight from others. But at the end of the day, it's an individualistic journey that we sometimes can use support from community, right? And the only thing I'm keen on is some of us have a tendency to compare it and contrast and be perfectionistic and maybe think,
oh, we still hear you, Michael.
Everyone will be at their own pace, but I could give a couple of take-home things for people.
Cheryl, come back, sweetie. Come back in the middle. Yeah.
So I can give a couple of take-home notes for people to sort of feel what the present moment awareness is like. It's like one thing you could do is, because I used to be on online support groups when I was in chronic pain, and the one thing I noticed on all chronic pain, most people will say, how come when I go on holidays, my pain disappears, but when I go home, it comes back? Because when you're on holiday, if you go camping or you go somewhere, notice what you've done. you've actually become aware of all your surroundings. So where are you? You're present. Your mind's not thinking about the past. You're not thinking about the future. You're actually in the present moment. So that starts from home. I mean, I don't know how many people have had a visitor come to their house and they go, I really like that picture on your wall. And you go, oh, I forgot I had that. Be aware of your surroundings at home. Make that your holiday. Become aware of your surroundings at home. And then if you can go to get out in nature somewhere, the other good thing to learn present moment is to go out into nature. If you can get near water running somewhere but not see it is the best thing. And just close your eyes, meditate if you want to, hear all the sounds, but as the sounds come, you might hear a bird, let them pass. Let that bird go. Then you might hear something else, let that go. Make sure then that you can only get to the stream or the river flowing in your ear, and that's all you can hear, and everything else is gone. That's entry into presence of what absolute presence is. But awareness of your surroundings is why where we're on holidays, we are so present because nothing else matters. We're not thinking about anything else but the moment. Yeah. So they would be
two things on that. One is sometimes the opposite happens. People will go on vacation and get in pain because they no longer have those things to distract them, and they push themselves to that point, and they're at their end, and then they fall apart. But when you also mentioned the online groups, and I think this is something for people to be thinking about a lot, that a lot of the time when we're in pain, and if you'll see this on Twitter a lot, that the people, they want an affinity group that makes them feel not so alone, but also they're sympathy seeking rather than empathy seeking, right? They want someone to take care of them rather than someone to fully understand them because they don't want to fully understand themselves. Now, that's not a judgment, it's more of an awareness. And once we realize when people are, like sometimes like I'll be trying to help somebody and at a certain point I was like, oh, they're just sympathy seeking and each thing I do that challenges them can make them angry. And I like, okay, I'll point that out and I'll try to help, but I'll only help as much as I can. And I won't allow myself to get wrapped up in it or feel responsible for it. But sometimes sympathy seeking, we may reel someone in and then get mad at them if they're not giving us the sympathy. And I'm just saying that you can see that a lot, not so much in the TMS groups, but in groups where people have come to a TMS group, they're like, oh, when I went and told them that I healed from Sarno, and then they ran me out of the group because they don't want to be challenged, Oh, that's nonsense. You can't heal with your, And so I just think that is this awareness is that even if someone's hearing this, they might think, oh, I recognize that, like that is me, and ouch, that makes me feel mad and it hurts me, but it's probably true. And when you do, then you can start to be like, oh, that's something I need to address. That's the responsibility.
Yeah. The responsibility.
Exactly.
We have got this information session coming up, and we'll put it on our side bar there. And then that way you can either get in touch with Cheryl. We've included her phone, not her phone number, her email address, so you can actually directly speak to her, or you can speak to support at TMSRoundTable. And Michael is always available on these things. If you've got any questions for Michael, please put it on the chat there. Now, also, anyone who's hasn't seen All the Rage Saved by Sarno, please get it on Vimeo, isn't it? Vimeo.
Yeah, it's alltheragedoc.com has all the links, but it's available it's not available from us in Germany and France, but it's available there through distributors. But everywhere else, it's worldwide. It can be done.
80 countries.
So please,
80 countries.
Yeah. Please watch it. I beg of you, watch it. Anyone with chronic pain, watch it. It's about back, but it's about everything because our chronic pain is about our emotions. So please, even if it's a headache, just go to that whole model of why you've got the headache or the foot pain or whatever, because it's not just the back, but Michael had to use one format to demonstrate. Oh, well, here, you tell us about it, Michael, not me.
I think what's interesting
you're the producer.
It was a little bit of a difficult process because I think when you make things that exist in a middle space, it's hard to push them into the world. So it's not really a doctor's movie because it's not trying to prove that Dr. Sarno is right. Instead, it's trying to show you that there's something very relevant here. But it's also trying to connect it to Dr. Gabor Mate and Dr. David Clark and how stress affects all of our body systems, so that we walk away recognizing that this kind of fallacy that medicine should only focus on the physical. I mean, it's literally like 70 years of medical psychosis, if you ask me, to kind of insist that we leave the emotions to the psychologist. It is something we deal with in science, but in the science of psychology, like this idea, it's just absurd. Like, and so trying to make a movie that dealt with that 4 years ago even was impossible. But now I think it's kind of making even more sense because it is connected to this whole idea of trauma awareness. But actually, when we made it, we didn't even have that word. 4 years ago, we never really thought about the term trauma awareness. But that's really where Dr. Sarno came from. And I think there's a tendency that we all have to want clarity of information, but it's not really clear. It's individualistic, and sometimes that space in the middle, which is also always shifting along with our culture, it's hard to find. But I think what's so exciting right now is that we are at a place where the culture is opening up to this idea of trauma awareness. One of the problems is I think you actually put it in the note, Rose, which was that the truth will set you free, but first it's going to make you really angry. And we're in that space as a culture right now where everybody is really angry. And isn't that exciting that they're so angry? Because after they can let that anger go, then I think we could possibly heal the planet.
Wow. Wow.
But a lot of that anger is awareness that things are really unfair and they're really out of balance, both economically, politically, socially, structurally, and they've been that way for centuries. So how do we bring that back into kind of balance? And so it's understandable there's a lot of rage. And that's what I'm also saying kind of sometimes about boundaries. When you're dealing with something where there's so much rage, sometimes the teacher just has to stand there and watch because you can't say anything. You're not going to change the situation and you're not going to help the situation. You can just kind of like patiently wait until people calm down. You can't calm them sometimes.
Look how smart pain has made all of us. I mean, really, Michael, that was Cheryl. I mean, like, really, you guys, I love hearing you guys. And it's on the other side. Like, if people can just have the patience with themselves, to sometimes when we have pain, if we just be with it, on the other side of it is incredible relief and such an amazing lesson. And I post a lot on this chart about being and doing, and it's from this book because they scientifically found that we'll live longer if we be more. We'll live longer. The telomeres will be longer and we'll live longer, so we can be around longer to help world peace. So that's my purpose, is to kind of keep aging gracefully with Rose till we're at least like 120. And then we can finally meet some, because we haven't anyway. But think about that. Being in the presence is going to help us live longer.
Yeah.
And
get you out of pain. Yes. But that's beside the point.
It'll stop you because when we're in chronic pain, we're the perfect word is we're seeking. We're always seeking for that pill, that medicine. We go to our doctors and say, but I want to get better now. I want to get better now. So those people who are listening who want to do the presence process, it will teach you to stop seeking and be in the moment, to be with it. Then the let go of emotions and all that happens with it. But you won't seek. You'll actually learn to be with it. And then that's the healing process. That's when the pain goes and starts to let go. So yes, whilst we're seeking, we're just we're telling our bodies that we're not in the moment. Every time you go to seek, you're still telling your body, I'm not going to be with you. I don't. No. I don't. Let the pain go. No, go away. You're seeking for something. It doesn't want you seeking. It wants you to be with it, and then you let go.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So profound.
Well, like Dr. Sarno always talked about the pain as being a distraction, but you can also frame it as something that's trying to get your attention and get you to pay attention to it. And both things can be true at the same time. Different parts of you are at war with each other, and
that's right.
You are the person who's trying to bring those things into balance. You're not the pain. You're not the suffering. You're the observer of it. And the more you observe it, the less it's there.
Yeah.
Yes.
Look, it always reminds me of being caught in a rip. I don't know if in America, do you call is that what you call? Yeah.
Yeah, the riptide. Yeah, and he pulls you out into the water. Yeah.
Yes, and the turmoil is underneath, but you can't see it. Yeah, and you look at the waves and you see them crashing on the shore, and you think, "I'll go to that smooth part; it'll be okay." But it's the smooth part on the surface, like keeping down your thoughts and ideas, and then there's turmoil within. And so when we move into that present process and move into that book and see how Michael Brown actually put it all together as a journey, as a nautilus, as Michael described it, getting into the core of our being. So, all being well, I hope that many of you will join us on our event next week.
Yeah, we'll advertise it, and it's not going to be until the end, at the beginning of the year, but we would like to prepare.
Oh, it's 2 weeks away.
The event, yeah, but the actual class.
Yeah, actually, we didn't clarify that, did we?
Dear? What?
No. Well, we're going to have an opening so that everyone can come and ask questions, and then after during the holidays, they've got time to read the first 100 pages of the book, and then they can move into doing the program in February, so that we're all together in February. But during the summer holiday, summer for us and winter for you guys, you can get the gist of the book.
Right.
In front of a cozy fire in America. Oh boy.
In front of a pool in Australia.
Won't we, Cheryl? We'll be out at the beach. I look out there at the ocean out there. It's beautiful.
I look forward to doing some of the sessions actually from my backyard. I might put a bit of the mountains in the background to just bring some peace to people. But just those people who are keen to come and listen or are sitting on the fence, when you come, the beauty of presence is there's no judgment. There's no pace that's set. We don't set a pace. It will come in its own pace when you are ready. You can just come and listen. You don't have to ask a question if you're just interested to see what's going on. But just know when you come, there is no judgment put before you.
It's a really safe place. We create a really
safe place.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Beautiful.
Absolutely.
Beautiful.
That's fantastic.
Yes.
Well, thank you, guests.
Yeah, amazing.
Thank you, Tovah.
Yeah,
for being
the Rose. Yeah,
thank
the
you,
orchestra.
Thank you, Rose. Thank you, Michael.
Yeah.
Nice to see you all.
Yeah, so we'll see you all next week, and so nice to have all of you listening. We had a lot of people that showed up, and I know you can't see the questions, Cheryl, but you have a fan club out here that came to.
Okay.
Yeah, and we hope to see you in the presence process because it's an ongoing journey. So we're with you. We're with you on your journey, and that's what's so beautiful about.
Yes.
And I do want to say one more thing about the group before we say goodnight. It's that, there's a discipline, the group. It's like, I wouldn't be disciplined enough to do it on my own, but when I have the group, even me, I mean,
You're pretty disciplined, Doc.
Oh yeah, but the presence process, but the presence process is not easy. It's like I want to share it. I want to share it. I want to put my head on Rose's shoulder, and I want to be like, let's do this together. And it's because it's what do I want to say?
It can be uncomfortable.
Well, it's not so much uncomfortable. It's like the real thing.
Yes, it is uncomfortable.
It's not so much uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable.
Because you're going against what your body is.
What you've been used to doing.
Yes, and I don't want to. I want to learn it with others. I want to know that others are there with me. It's like a great. It's like coming to camp. It's like coming to summer camp.
It will be like that.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much, and have a great day, night, morning. We'll see you all next week. Thank you so much. Bless you all.
Thanks.
Bye everyone.
Here we